In this video, you'll learn how to send compressed, encrypted backup files to a remote server in Bash. First thing I want to do is I want to get into my remote server and I want to see how much space is left on the disk. So I'm going to instantiate a variable, a session variable, and I'm going to call my server at this address. It's a local server. It's a VM. I'm going to say remote server is equal to this IPv4. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to get into that server remotely and ask it how much space it has left. I'm going to call remote server, my variable, remote server, and I'm going to say, hey, give me my space. And it says, hey, we've got over 89% used. So that's a lot of space used. But what I'm really looking for is this here, this path to my root directory. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to run that same command, SSH, but instead of actually calling DFH, I'm going to say DFH, and I'm going to grep out some information, right? Because I want to get a little bit more information on this line, but how do you target that line, right? So I'm going to say grep. I'm going to grep out the line, so it's dev. That's the line I was looking for. Probably need to get that / there. Dev SDA2. That's my directory. And I want to run another operation. So now we have this line in memory once I run this. And what I want to do is I want to grab a certain section. Right? So I want to grab not the first section, second. I want to grab the third section here. Okay? And to do that, I'm going to use awk. Awk is a programming language. It's a wonderful little tool that I think a lot of technicians are probably using every day. And I want to print out let's just print out the first section quickly. First section, and see what that gives us. So that's going to give us SDA1. Now, like I said, that's the first section. I don't want that. I want my third section. So we're going to print out my third column. Here we go, 56. That says 56. This says 52. Hold on a second, man. Man df. H and H. It's going to give me a base size of 10 or a base of 2. So I don't want 10, I want 2. Go ahead and run a lowercase h flag. Bada bing, bada boom. This is cool. Okay, I obviously don't want the G because this is going to need to be a variable they're going to play with to run an operation on. But it's looking good so far. But instead of grabbing the size here, I think what I'd like to do instead is grab my percentage. I like that better. Let's do that. So that should be 3, 4, and 5. That should be space 5. Bam, 89%. Okay, cool. We're getting there. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to set out here we go. I'm going to set out this this percentage sign. We don't need that. So I'm going to do a substitute. And I need my $sign here, pop-off, and there we go. Cool, that should be good. 89. Let's clear my terminal. So now that we have the percentage of space left on the system, I'm going to run a conditional to find out if I am over a certain percentage or under a certain percentage using that variable, which is if we just echo out remote space, which is 89. So what I want to do is I want to say if. I'm going to run my condition if remote space, space, if it's greater than, right? So if it's greater than 80, what we want to do is we want to say, do something. Now in Bash, you got to be really careful with these spaces here. So these brackets like to have a little bit of room. If I were to run this like this, it's not going to work the way I would expect. I need to add some space. They like to breathe. So I'm going to say if that, then. We're going to say then echo. We're going to say echo that it's greater than 80. Just simply. And I probably should spell that correctly. echo, greater than 80. That's my string. Else, we're going to say echo, echo, less than 80. All right, and else phi, because that's my condition. And we get the output. It's greater than 80 because our remote space variable is actually 89, and that's 89 is greater than 80. Now, that's fine for a lot of people. The thing is, I don't like this nonsense. I don't like it. It's way too much, for something so simple as true or false, right? So it's either one or the other. And so whenever I get the opportunity, I like to run a ternary because this can actually be quite expensive. So the way if-else works is the moment we hit an else that doesn't pass, it's going to go back up to the if, run this, go down to the next else, and then if that doesn't pass, it's going to go back up to the if again, run this again, and then continue to run it until either it exits or it finds what it's looking for. And that's very, very, very dirty and expensive. And so I'm going to run a ternary expression because ternary expressions are really simple and they're more beautiful, easier to debug, and they're less expensive. So let's do things right. Remote space. And again, keep our space in between our brackets because the brackets like to breathe a little bit. Greater than, we can say greater than 80. If it's greater than 80, what we want to do, and I'm going to show you, let me just show you the syntax quickly because it's really quite cool. Here's our ternary, right? True, else, false. That's it. That's our syntax. Pretty cool. I'm going to keep that open because it's going to be easier to work with. So we're going to say we want our remote space, spell that correctly. If it's greater than 80, we're going to run, this won't run actually because true's not going to give us what we want. We want to echo out the same thing we did before, that it's greater than 80, right? Else is false, and so it's going to be less than 80. Let's take a look. 3, 2, 1, go. Okay, so it's actually greater than 80, but what if our remote space was actually less than 80? If we're looking at this in the opposite direction. What did I do wrong? Oh my gosh, I'm so silly. Echo. There we go. Okay, now it's actually less than 80, right? And so this gives us an idea as to whether or not we're actually working with a integer over a string, and we know that this is an integer because when I run my evaluation, it can be either less than or greater than 80. It's not giving me the same output. I either get one or the other output. So this is exactly working the way that I want it to. Let's clear out my terminal. Okay, that's great, but I want to get notified, right? So if one part of this expression, if it fails, probably want to do greater than as opposed to less than. So if this fails, if it's greater than 80, I want to get notified here, right? And I don't want the script to go any further. I don't want to send data to my remote, cold site if I'm actually over 80% on my remote server. That just wouldn't make much sense. So what I want to do is I want to get a notification here. And the way I'm going to do that is by creating a webhook. And Discord is a great way of doing this. I can set up a channel, make it private, right? It's private. Go into settings, integration. I want to go to webhooks, and I made one already. Here we go. Copy my URL. And now I want to send a message to that channel. So the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to say, I'm going to do webhook. You can call it whatever you want. We're going to call it webhook, and I want to use that webhook here. So quite simply, I'm going to grab my command from before, and I'm going to output my result to Discord in this section of my ternary expression. So curl is a good way of doing that. I'm going to curl my content type, and it's going to be called application JSON. I'll check for mistakes in just a second. I need my, let's see, needs to be inside of this here, curly braces, and my content is going to be, content is going to be, what do I want to call it? We'll just use the same sort of silly syntax, not syntax, but same sort of text we used before. And did I do that correctly? I think so. Go ahead and add my webhook so I don't make any mistakes. Just copy and paste. There we go. I think that's good. Here we go. Give it a shot. Looks like it might have run correctly. And go, oh, I didn't exit. Hey, over 80%. Pretty cool. Great. So I'm just going to go ahead and delete that message. Great. So that works. So now we know how to send a notification to a channel in Discord. We know how to grab our space from our remote space used from our remote system. And we know how to run a ternary expression to do one of two different things. And we're going to use that later because we're going to create blocks. And so in one part of this ternary, we might run a certain block of code, or we might run a different block of code. Obviously, echoing out a string is not going to help us very much if we're doing our daily lives and we're not looking at our terminal. We need it to be a little bit smarter than that. So let's have some fun. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to clone my repository, the one that I'm referencing in this video. And if we get into the directory here, get a nano backup. Okay, so in this script, I'm actually making a fair amount of assumptions, which, is sometimes okay, but, sometimes it's not okay. For example, I'm making the assumption that you have sendmail, on your system, the system that this script is going to be running on, sendmail, and that you even have it set up correctly, right? And so I'm replacing this in this video with Discord, so we're just going to have a notification sent to Discord. But if you are curious, this is the script that I'm referencing for this video. You can take a look at the blocks and how I break everything up in the script so that we segment things off. We're going to have certain parts of code running at certain times and doing certain things, and we're going to get more into that in this video. But what I want to do now is I want to just nano a script. It's going to get really simple. I want to specify my shell. Say bin bash. Bash is awesome. And just like my script, I'm going to set up a passphrase, right? A pass is what I'm going to call it. I'm going to do phrase here, and you should be using keys. You shouldn't be using a text password when you're actually encrypting data. And the reason why is because in tools like HTOP, you can see the passphrase as it's encrypting the data. And so if you're encrypting a large amount of data and anybody else is on the machine that you're on, they're going to see the password just floating around in that GPG command, which is bad practice. But for the sake of this video, I'm just going to simplify things. I'm going to need the date also. The reason why I need today's date is because I want my backups to be labeled by date. Right, and I'll show you the date command here. Just put that in here. We'll save it. Date is going to give me this output here. But the problem is I've got spaces and I've got these colons as well. And colons are evil. Some systems don't like colons. I don't like colons. Let's not use the evil colons. So let's simplify our date command. Our output here is going to need to be a little bit more beautiful. I like having year, month, day. I think it's just really cool. Oops, don't want to do that. Year, month, day. And I need to probably specify my year. Where's my plus? There's my plus. And I need my percentage, year. There's my year. I'm going to separate the segments of the date with hyphens. I'd like to find out if I did that correctly. Take a look. Okay, no command found for this because that was the output. Okay, that's cool. I've got my year, month, and date. Nice. Get back into my script. Now I want to know what my remote server is. So when we're doing our backup, we can just use a variable. Okay, we're going to call this remote server. And this, in my case, is Debian. It's just a local machine. Okay, so I don't have to run this every single time inside of some other part of my script. I can just run my variable. Pretty simple. I'm going to set up a path to dir, a directory that I'm going to be working out of. And the reason why I'm doing this is because this is going to be the directory where I'm compressing, encrypting, sending, and removing. That's the kind of the step. We want to compress the data, we want to encrypt it, we want to send it, and then after we're done sending it, we want to delete it from our directory. So we need a path to dir, and I don't remember what that is, so I'm going to find out. Where am I? There I am. Cool. And this is my path to dir. I'm going to go into temp. I'm going to create something called tar dir, and this is going to be not a directory. It's just going to be the name of my tar, my compressed file. So this is the variable here that I'm pulling up from today. So the date's just going to be inputted here, essentially, in this compressed file. Now what I want to do is grab my remote space Remember that long command we used before? I'm going to copy that command from off screen because it's quite long. And then I want to get into my path to dir. I want to make sure that I'm in that directory. And once I'm in my directory, I want to run a couple different blocks. I'm going to call this one compress. I'm going to call another one encrypt. I'm going to call the last one send. And then I need some sort of evaluation at the end to run, one series of blocks versus another series. Now, in the script that I have online, the one I made reference to earlier, that actually makes sense. In this case, we're going to just output a string on one side of this ternary because we don't have two conditions. In this video today, I'm just going to show you one set of conditions. And so in my script, there are two. First condition being, hey, is this less than, I think I did 10 gigs or something like that per file or per output of my tar, or it's a multiple tar because we're going to be doing more than 10 gigabyte increments. For example, I've got a folder that's 50 gigabytes. Well, now that I definitely want to break up into smaller chunks by compressing that into 10 gigabyte segments, as opposed to what we're going to be doing today, which is, just everything below 10 gigabytes, or, choose your output. But again, in the script, I'm breaking my script up into two sections. The script from GitHub, one section for less than 10 gigabytes, another section for greater than. But in this video, we're just going to simplify things. So I'm going to echo true. We're going to echo false. There we go, for the moment. I like to actually instantiate a little output when I'm building scripts this way. There are better ways of doing this, but I'm just going to output running compress block. Okay. And we're going to tar. So it's going to tar our folder. If this tar passes, I want to know about it. If it fails, I also want to know about it. And that's actually good practice when you're working in Bash because it's not the easiest language to debug, really. I'm going to say equals 0. I'll tell you what that means in just a second. And so 0 is success, right? So this is a success code. So was it successful? Yes, it was successful. Did I get a 1? Did I get some other status code? That's a failure. Or it could be something else, but, in most cases, it's not successful, so it didn't pass, right? So we're going to say false. If it did pass, I want to run this next block. So what I'm going to do is just call the block. Just like that. Okay, let's go ahead and encrypt our data. So I'm going to echo out running, like I did before, running. Now, this next part of the block, I don't want to run immediately. And the reason why is because GPG is going to go ahead and take that tar. It's going to start encrypting it and then put it somewhere. And that's kind of a problem because the moment it exists somewhere, the next part of the block is going to see that and it's going to go, hey, why don't we go ahead and send that? Right? But if you're working with large amounts of data, that's a problem, right? Because we're going to try and send something that's only a partial. We're not going to send the completed folder, file, whatever. We're going to send, a partial. That's not what we want. So we're going to set up an until loop. But to do that, I actually need the PID. So I'll tell you what I'm doing here. PS aux. So I'm basically looking for processes. And I'm going to, now that I have all of them in memory, I'm going to go ahead and grep out. So I'm going to pull out from that long list anything that has GPGC batch passphrase. If you're not using batch, you won't have the same results here. So passphrase. And again, I mentioned this before. This GPG command, as brilliant as it is, it's encrypting your data. It's running that passphrase in the terminal. So that is terrible. So again, you should be using certificates. You shouldn't be using passphrases. Because anybody sharing this machine with you can easily see what your passphrase is. And obviously you're storing it in this file. But if you have good permissions and you can hide that. But again, you can't hide this. So that's terrible. Anyways, I want to awk out the second column, and then I want to get the head -1, and then grep vgrep. And the reason why I'm using grep vgrep here is because it's going to remove grep. Whenever you grep, your process will show, your process list will show that you're grepping something. So you'll actually have an ID. So this could actually give you a false positive, and that's the reason why I'm using grep vgrep. Kind of cool. Okay, now let's do our until block. And what I want to do is get my little copy paste action going on here. And you know, I don't want to confuse my system, so I'm going to say send block. So now we should have two files. We should have a GPG file, and we should also have a tar file. Okay, so we no longer need the tar. We just need the GPG because that's our encrypted data. So we're going to go ahead and remove our tar. I'm just going to say RM since we're already in the directory, and this is really helpful to keep in mind. I can't scroll up. Well, anyways, but above we instantiated a directory that we want to jump into, so we're technically still in that directory because we haven't changed. So I'm going to go ahead and remove my path to dir /tardir. And I don't want to make mistakes, so I'm just going to copy and paste. There we go. Be careful because you can do some damage. Obviously run this in a test environment before you put it in production. Okay, moving forward. Again, I want to find out if this passed. If it did, great. If it didn't, well, let's do something. So next we want to send the data. I'm going to say bin rsync, and I'm going to do SSH here. Depending on how your system is set up, you may or may not want to do what I'm doing. I like to set a bandwidth limit. So you have to think about three different things. How much CPU are you going to consume? How much bandwidth are you going to consume? And how hard do you want to hit the drive? And by setting your bandwidth limit, you're going to pacify, essentially, those three things. You don't want to use too much CPU, you don't want to use too much bandwidth, and you might not also want to use, you might not want to hit the hard drive too hard. I'm going to append GPG to the end, and then I want my remote server. At the end, I want to remove the GPG file. And the reason why is because, well, hey, we don't need it anymore. It's now on the remote host. So I'm going to trap. I'm going to say RM. RM, where's my pretty little string here? That's the one. RM this. So RM, remove this GPG. And I'm already in my directory, so I don't need to change directories. That should be just fine. And the trap essentially is going to run once my block is finished. So at the end, on the exit. So now we're going to be able to run our condition, but I don't remember if I I didn't set it. Yeah, so before running anything, we need to know if our backup size that we're going to be sending, so the data we're going to be sending to the remote, is over a certain amount, right? Because earlier we grabbed the percentage, and that's, all fine and well. But hey, if what we're trying to send is going to suffocate that server, we definitely don't want to send it. So let's create a variable called backup size. Backup size. We're going to set that equal to. I'm going to set it equal to path to dir, the size of path to dir. So I don't know what that is. So let's find out what that is. So to get my byte size, I'm going to say dus, and I want to grab my byte size of. Where's my script? There. Hey. 8. So I need my byte size of my path to dir, my directory, and I think that's good. Okay, so what I want to test this because I might get an output that I don't expect. So let's go ahead and say path to dir is this. Let's go ahead and say backup size is this, and I want to echo. I want to see what this is. I don't want any surprises. Echo the backup size. There we go. Okay, so I definitely don't want this. I just want my byte size. Let's do an echo. Echo byte size. No, I think what I might want to do, I got to change this command. Why don't we awk? Let's awk. I'm going to find my first instance of a /, which is not what I want. So I'll do first instance of /, and I want to print out just the first line. Yeah, let's try that. Print $1. Did I do that correctly? Let's find out. Ooh, that's not good. Oh wait, yeah, it's locked away in this beautiful little variable. Let's echo out. Hey, cool. Okay, that's what I would expect. So let's copy that. nano my script and put that little beauty here. But I probably want to get that just a little bit closer for posterity of this script. I think it's good. I think it looks good to me. If it is going to break, we're going to find out at what part or at what point it breaks, because we're going to run these little echo commands that show us what part of the block we're on, and some more echo commands to see at what part did it break. So now I just need to check my size, my backup size. And if it's over a certain amount of bytes, I don't want to send the data. So I'm just going to say if the backup size is greater than, what was it, 260 something before for the entire folder. If it's greater than 10, right, we're going to back it up using our, what was it called, compress block? Compress block? I think it's called compress block. Else, say, could not back up. Could not back up. Okay? Let's give that a shot. That looks wrong. Wrong. Okay, cool. I think we're good. Okay, let's give this a shot. So I'm going to chmod plus X on my script. I can now run it. Actually, you know what? Before I do that, I want to nano my script. I want to actually run a beautiful little webhook. Where's my webhook? Oh, I didn't add it, did I? Beautiful little webhook. Go ahead and copy the URL. And we're going to go back into the script. Nano the script. I'm going to set a variable here for webhook. Nice and big. There we go. And at the very end, I want a nice little notification saying that, hey, it finished. So at the end, I'm going to say trap. You know, in fact, instead of doing that, why don't I just tag it at the end of this? So first I'm going to run the compress block, and the compress block is going to send a signal to the encrypt block to start its process, and then the encrypt block won't finish until a certain PID is empty, and then the send block is going to run. But I think what's going to happen is I'm going to run my compress block. It's going to pass. Then this is going to run. So I'm going to get a little bit of a false positive. Let's go ahead and get rid of this. Copy it. I'm just going to put it here at the end. There we go. Okay, so that should work just fine. Let's go ahead and save it. Huh. I called the wrong username. Let's fix that. It's actually not Debian. It's Parallels. I make mistakes. We all make mistakes. Forgivable mistakes. There we go. Oh my gosh. Do rsync. Probably spell that correctly. There we are. And bada bing, bada boom. I don't like this. Fix that. Shouldn't be on another line. Why is that on another line? That shouldn't be there. See, is there anything else that's broken? Send block, yeah. Why is that there? This is why you should probably be doing this from a code editor and not from a terminal screen. Oh my, I'm not giving a directory. It doesn't know what to compress. It's like, hey, what do you want to compress? Let's take a look. Let's just save that. Should have like encrypted backups, right? Yeah. I'll compress that. Let's nano my script. Let's feed you this folder. Okay. What else? Am I missing anything? I don't like that. That's not nice. I think it's good. Let's give that a shot. Run the scripts. Hey, looks good. Seems like that passed. So let's take a look on the remote machine. Yes. Okay, cool. So let's open this, or decrypt the file. It's going to ask us for our passphrase, which is just phrase. The most secure passphrase in the world. Looks like that passed. So let's go ahead and decompress the tar file that we got out of that. This one here. Okay. So I should have encrypted backups. Hey, yeah, awesome. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video. You just learned how to compress, encrypt, and send a encrypted file over to a remote site.